Hey everyone, it's Stephanie here. I'm here quarantined like everyone else. I'm here and I've been given the task to help you guys go over chapter 11 in preparation for your final exam. Yay. I am going to do the best I can. When I was reading this chapter, there's so much good information in it that I think is not only relevant to you as future helpers, but also for yourselves as you just continue through life. I think it's some amazing information on positive living and life satisfaction because that's all we're looking for, right? We're looking for satisfaction. I cannot go as deep as I would like to go in all these topics, obviously, but hopefully I can help you understand some of this content, maybe give you some examples, some things to look at, some activities to do, to help you kind of get prepared for this next part of your test. So, let's go. So, this chapter opens with positive psychology. So, what is positive psychology? Basically, positive psychology answers a problem that some people have with psychology in general. Um, the problem being that we are focusing way too frequently on the things that are going wrong, the things that people aren't doing well, their diagnoses and their labels, and all the, shame and guilt that comes with that. Um, and it says, hey, why don't we focus on something else? Why don't we focus on positives? Why don't we focus on what people are doing well? Why don't we focus on their strengths? It really flips the script as far as, what most psychologists look at into a very different light. And how do we create also a positive mindset for people that is sustainable without therapy? As therapists, we do not want our clients to stay with us forever. The goal is for them to sustain a lifestyle that they no longer need counseling. And so creating a positive mindset, creating meaning in their lives and enriching their lives, and knowing that, they're capable and have strengths and have, things to contribute to this world is a great way of kind of creating this sustainable mindset to give to our clients, which I think is really fantastic. It's also important to note that the positive psychology kind of piggybacks off of the humanistic approach to therapy or counseling and things like that. It's not just about the relational. It's not just about creating meaning. It's kind of like on top of that, how do we focus on positive, mindset and the strengths of people. And so it couples really well with this kind of humanistic approach of Carl Rogers and different people. Oh, and I didn't mention this before, but please feel free to pull up your PowerPoint and follow along. It's what I'm using. I've got it right here on my other computer, and I'll be referencing it throughout this video, so definitely pull that up. Okay, so positive psychologists are looking at three things: positive subjective experiences, positive individual traits, and positive institutions. We're going to go through these more in depth. And I think we're starting with positive subjective experiences, which is slide 4. So positive subjective experiences is, well, let's break that down. So positive, obviously positive emotions are tied to that. Subjective, which is the opposite of objective, so what they mean to you. So if you're experiencing those things, that's what's most important. And then experiences, so things that you are feeling throughout the world. This could be positive emotions, it could be positive moods, it could just be a feeling of well-being. More specifically, they talk about finding flow, which is kind of activities that absorb people to kind of lose track of time and space and things like that. The most oftentimes I've seen that is in creative people or artists. If you know someone who's an artist, you may, they have the story of someone who is creating, and, when they get in that wonderful headspace of creativity, they kind of just lose everything else. Everything kind of just falls into the background and they're just immersed in what they're doing. A lot of times they skip meals, a lot of times they don't get good sleep. I know my sister's an artist, so she's very much that way. Sometimes when she's on a roll, she just stays in that flow. When I experience flow, mine is more just like feeling like I'm where I'm supposed to be, right where I need to be. I experience it a lot in nature. And just noticing the little things and not caring so much about where I have to be right, after this or what was happening before. I'm kind of just accepting the moment where it is and just living for it. It's funny, even as I'm kind of talking about this flow, it makes so much sense in how it's connected to mindfulness. Mindfulness is the practice of kind of just being present. Again, not worrying about where you have to go later, or the list that you have to check off, or the things that you were doing before this. It's kind of like this intentional practice of being present. There's so many different ways that you can do that. A lot of the common ways is like practicing meditation. Sometimes yoga incorporates mindfulness. Mindfulness in eating has been shown to help with a lot of people that deal with anorexia or bulimia or eating disorders in general. So as a little challenge to you guys, I've got a list pulled up here of some mindfulness practices that I want to challenge you with and see if there's one here that you can do on your own and see how that impacts you. So I've got on here mindfulness breathing or mindful breathing, which is just kind of being aware of the breath. So this can often be done with a meditation practice where you can kind of just sit with your eyes closed, lights down, maybe some soothing music in the background, and just focusing on breath, not letting any of your thoughts kind of travel away. The way it was kind of taught to me is to kind of acknowledge the thought, because sometimes, especially when you're first starting out, you're sitting there, your eyes are closed, you're thinking about, oh, I gotta go to the grocery store, or this pandemic is really causing a lot of anxiety, or insert thought here. So a lot of times when you try to push those thoughts out, it pushes them even farther in somehow, because it's like, don't think about a pink elephant. You're all thinking about a pink elephant. So a way to do that is to kind of acknowledge the thought when it comes in and just say, okay, thank you, and then return back to your breath and just focus on the in and out of breathing. There are also some tutorials that you can find on YouTube, and I may put one or two of those below so that you can check them out if that's the one that you want to do. We can certainly do that. So some other things on here is mindful observation. So whether it's going outside and looking at a rose bush, noticing all the petals, noticing the color, noticing the shape, and maybe touching the leaves and how they feel, or, all things like that, and just kind of being present and being in the observation of whatever that thing is. Mindful awareness is just simply being aware of what's going on around you. So, like, I'm sitting in this room right now. I'm aware of the fan that's spinning over my head. I'm aware of the candle that I've got lit flickering over here. I can hear it kind of flicker. I'm aware of the air being cool on my skin. I'm aware of, what's going on around you. So that's another practice that you can do. Mindful listening, it can be just sitting, listening to a song and really kind of just zoning in on it and listening to the melody, listening to the beat, listening to all the things that make up the composition of the music. Mindful immersion. Eesh. Sorry, I wasn't as familiar with that one, so I had to look into what mindful immersion is. So mindful immersion is basically whenever you have a task that you normally do. So say it's making your bed, or doing some chores, or whatever. It's fully immersing yourself like never before doing that thing, being aware of, how the broom goes across the floor, being aware of, the smell of the cleaner that you're putting in and how lovely that might be. It's really immersing yourself in the task that you do every day and kind of finding a new respect for it a lot of times. Mindful appreciation is the last one, and so this is kind of a gratitude practice or an appreciation practice. Think about, and maybe you want to have a journal or something to write down for this one, and kind of just think about a relationship that you have, or someone that you care about, or a situation that may be difficult even, like the fact that we're all sitting in our houses. And just kind of writing down the things that you appreciate about that person or that thing or that experience, and finding all of those positive things, even if they're tiny, even if they're, kind of a reach. It's kind of just like taking that thing and really being mindful about all of those things that you appreciate about it, and practicing some gratitude. So I got these 6 things from a website called Pocket Mindfulness, and I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put that article of exercises on below so that you can check those out and see which one you're drawn to and how that works out for you. Okay, so now that we've covered kind of the subjective experiences, we're going to talk about positive individual traits. Oh my gosh, why is that so hard to say? So traits obviously are the dimensions of personality, individual difference, and characteristics that we use to evaluate, interpret, and predict the behavior of others. So positive individual traits are positive skills that you have developed through your experiences. Don't know what your strengths are? That's okay, because I have a resource for you. I came ready. So, one of the things that I have been able to do throughout my life is to go to a leadership training that was for women in college when I was an undergrad, and we took this test called Strengths Finder, and what it did was it took 30 different variables and kind of did this assessment, and it picked like your top 5 strengths. The Strength Finders test is kind of like this idea that, focusing on your weaknesses as a team or as a leader is kind of a waste of energy and effort, because instead of putting that effort into things that you're not naturally good at, you could put that energy into things that you are good at. And so if you know what those top 5 strengths are, then you know what to cultivate and know how you can be more effective in a group dynamic and in leadership. So we are going to take the test. So the website is high5test.com. And when it pulls up, you can kind of see it kind of says discover the best part of yourself. And it's a strengths test. It's free for you to use. It's 100 questions where you kind of scale between like and dislike, and it'll take you a few minutes to get it done, but it's not terribly long. It's not terribly difficult to do. And it will give you the top 5 strengths and kind of some characteristics about each of those 5 things. You can do a full report and pay money for that, but you definitely don't have to do that. The basics is good enough. So yeah, I will make sure to include that below. Do it, and we may be asking you to post maybe on your discussion board about the results of that and what you found about it, and maybe some other cool stuff too, so definitely check that out. Okay, so back to the PowerPoint. It includes on this positive individual traits is protective factors. So what are protective factors? These are factors that protect us from symptoms of mental disorder or mental diagnoses. So things like the way I relate to this is when I did my internship at Hillcrest, we had protective factors section that we would ask all of our clients so that we knew what would help them, because a lot of them were either suicidal or homicidal or had a lot of issues with psychosis. And so it was important to know, okay, did they have, a faith in a higher power that would help them through this process? Did they have a reason to live, like their family members or their career, or things that protect them from going down a darker road? So that's kind of how I look at protective factors, and there's a bunch of them out there. Sounds like a great test question to me. Is what is considered a protective factor and list some things? I mean, definitely look into that. That sounds like it would be a great test question. But certainly protective factors are important because it doesn't focus on the reasons that you want to hurt yourself. They focus on the reasons why you want to live. So that's kind of that flip from focusing on the problem to focusing on something more positive. Protective factors are definitely one of those. Okay, so I wanted to make sure that you had enough information on protective factors, since this may be a test question. And so I found my training manual for when I was in my internship. And it has here the intake form, and it has patient strengths on here. And so I want to read these off to you, just so they have more examples of protective factors. So supportive family and friends, leisure or recreational interests, technical or vocational skills, medical status, capable of independent living, education, intelligence, being bright or capable, motivation of treatment, insight into problems, sense of humor, community support, and then they have an other box, and this one was written here as imagination. So all of these things, protective factors. Okay, so this next section is positive institutions. So these are organizations that encourage civil virtues, support people in being good citizens, and help people become satisfied, tolerant, and altruistic. A lot of these are, nonprofit organizations and different things that kind of help people, promote altruism and being good citizens and all of that. One of the problems that I see with this is if you expect your place of business or the place that you work to be a positive institution, that's not always realistic. Maybe this is another discussion question. So do you experience wherever you were employed or are employed or wherever you are right now, because things are crazy, as a positive institution, and why or why not? I think it's important to know where you stand with that, and maybe if the environment's not conducive to your well-being, maybe that's worth considering. I don't know. Check into it. Okay, so positive organizational behavior, or POB. Um, this is obviously something that's leaning toward the more of like the organizational psychology bit. If that's something you're interested in, then you probably know a lot more about this than I do, but it focuses on how to build and develop worker strengths. So it may take an assessment like, the top five that we're going to do. And it may look at those strengths and say, okay, so based on the organization, where do we need to kind of put people so that they're playing to their strengths? How are we incentivizing people to be engaged and develop those strengths? Are we offering trainings? Are we offering support? Are we offering benefits? What are we doing as a company and as an organization to get our workers to be at their best, and therefore making our company the best? So that's POB and what it does. Okay, moving on to values. Values are things that are important to you. Kind of like in a lot of things that we've talked about in this positive psychology bit, it is subjective. That means that something that may be super important to me may not be to you. And both of those things are valid. Their qualities that are desirable in other people as well as themselves, a lot of times in their relationships as well as themselves. Don't know what your values are? That's okay, because I'm here bringing you some stuff to help with that. So below I'm going to put a link to a list of common core values. It has 50 things on that list. So what I want you to do right now is I want you to pause this video and I want you to click on that link, and we're going to do an exercise together. So the first thing I want you to do is I want you to open that list, and I want you to pick your top 5. So I want you to look at this list below and pick your top 5 of the things that are most important to you from that list, okay? If there's something that's not included on that list that's like obvious to you that is a value to you, then make sure that you can always just pick that. But go ahead, pause the video now and pick your top 5. Okay, now that you've done that, I'm going to ask you to, out of the 5, I want you to pick your top 3. So, pause this video and pick your top 3. Alright, then I want you to go ahead from that 3 and pick 2. I think you know where this is going. After you pick your 2, I want you to pick your top 1. And I also want you to potentially put this in the discussion board. How was that exercise for you? What were your thoughts about it? What were your feelings? Was it difficult, or was it easy to kind of pick those values from that list? And as it got kind of narrower and narrower to that number 1, how much more or less difficult did it get? And also, were you surprised about the ones that you picked or the ones that you didn't pick? Include all that in the discussion. I think it'd make for an interesting conversation. Okay, so now that you've done this exercise, why was it important that we do it? Okay, so this is where I think the book does a really good job of laying out the importance of clarifying those values, which is what we just did. We clarified our values. Okay, so the importance of clarifying values is they influence daily behavior and are the justification for behavior. So they are kind of the filter in which you make decisions or support your decisions. If someone were to say, well, why did you do that? Well, this is why, because I value, respect, and so I did this because I needed respect from other people. They influence daily action, and that's really important to clarify those values for that, so that you know what's actually guiding that behavior. So number 2, our personal values influence the way we perceive and label behavior, our own and others. So this is really important too, right? So as humans, we are lazy thinkers, cognitive misers, right? We make shortcuts, and a lot of times the shortcuts aren't really valid. So we assume that the way that there are things that we value are oftentimes what other people value as well, and that can lead to a lot of miscommunication, a lot of misunderstandings, and a lot of issues. So make sure that we don't make that kind of cognitive shortcut, and understand that just because we um, value something very highly, that other people are making decisions based off of those values as well. They've got their own set of values, they got their own thing going on, and they have the right to that too. So important stuff. Number 3, there has been a trend towards increasing concern for oneself and decreasing concern for others. So this is just kind of saying that over the past 3 decades, college students have shown an increased concern of their own well-being and decreased concern of others' well-being. Prioritizing your own well-being means, prioritizing yourself and prioritizing your values. And so that's an important life skill to have. However, recent research has shown that students are actually moving away from that kind of individualistic thinking and thinking more about the needs of other people's, the disadvantaged, the underprivileged, and things like that. So that's really interesting. Go younger generations. That's awesome. Okay, so the next thing is that values help you be clear on the goals for your life. So if your goal is independence, financial independence, then you may make certain decisions about saving money and allocating that money differently than people that's not a certain value for them, that they want to throw themselves into their passions or their hobbies or different things like that. That's more important or more value to them, which is an important part of making decisions, and important reason why you should clarify those values. And number 5, examining the values that underpin society's actions and institutions can help you make decisions about the influence you want to have in the world. Oh, that's so true. I think I just saw myself in that sentence. So, yeah, I mean, and this is why, being our younger generations in general, I think, are becoming more politically in tune with what's going on and more informed in a lot of ways, because we want to make sure that our leadership is reflective of our values, and that's why it's so important to go out and vote. Not that I'm trying to get on this whole political thing right now, but it's true. The values underpinning society and institutions can help you make decisions about the influence you have in the world. Yeah. Be the change, right? And I think there's a huge movement that is starting from that idea, after the school shootings and different things like that, and Black Lives Matter and the Me Too movement. There's all these things that are kind of rising up out of that and saying, hey, these values are not being represented, even though there's something that we hold dear as a group of people. So definitely relate to that number 5. An interesting discussion question, perhaps. What do you think are the underpinning values of our society? Do you feel like they're reflective of your own? Why or why not? Okay, so, moving on. Vicktor Frankl, do not forget that name. It will probably be on your test. He is the father of logotherapy, which is, at the center of it is how to create meaning and purpose in your life. How can we... Logotherapy is literally removing the obstacles to be able to discover what life's meaning is for them. It's very existential. That if you have purpose and meaning, then you have will. And if you have a reason to live, then I think the quote was in the book, if you can answer the why to live, then you can endure any how to live. And what he means by that is if you have a reason, a why, then you can pretty much make it through any set of circumstances that a person can endure. You may be asking yourself, hey Stephanie, what does Vicktor Frankl know about suffering? Well, actually, he knows quite a bit. He actually was in Auschwitz during World War II and endured one of the biggest just instances of human suffering in the world. So, in some ways, he has kind of become a self-taught expert of suffering and overcoming challenges and how to maneuver those things. If you are going into the field of counseling, go ahead and just buy Vicktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. It is a cornerstone book in the field of counseling. You'll probably have to read it anyway, so you can get a leg up on everybody else. And read into that, because I just think there is so much good information in that book and in that story that he is able to share and kind of support his logo theory. Okay, so maybe you now buy into logo therapy and believe that Vicktor Frankl has something real to talk about. So say we do get, value from, purpose and meaning, and that's what helps us drive our way through this world. How do you find it? How do you find meaning? Well, it's also in the slides, it's also in your book, and it's also right here. We're going to talk about it. So, the ways you can establish meaning in their lives according to Vicktor Frankl. Dedication to a cause. So, finding a cause to live for. And I feel like a lot of these feel very, meta, but you can make them very real. So, dedication to a cause. You could say, humanity. But it could also be your kids. It could also be your family. It could also be yourself. And being the best version of yourself that you can be. It could be your career. Dedication to a cause. It could be, activism. It could be anything, big or small. The next one is creativity. So creating art or signaling to the world at large a message from a creative process. Good art causes a response, right? So whether that's positive or negative or anger or frustration, it kind of tunes people into the times and what's going on and what's important. And creativity can be meaning for yourself too. It doesn't have to be out there for the world. It can be a way to express yourself and to get in tune with yourself through that creative process. So important stuff. Service to others, volunteer work, and that's something I feel like is very underrated. Volunteer work and recognizing other people's struggles and other people's needs is an important way to put yourself into some perspective. Although I think, if I'm correct, if I'm not mistaken, younger generations have been doing more volunteer work overall, but I'll have to check myself on that and see. But I think I read some research on that. So good job, young people. So religious or spiritual practice. Again, religious and spiritual practice is a great thing. I think it doesn't have to be some, grand, proclamation to a certain religion or spiritual practice, but, being connected to nature, being connected to humanity, being connected to the oneness of all of us. The spiritual practices are definitely a way to find meaning. Praying or meditation or whatever can actually help you connect. Excuse me. Self-actualization is the last one. And self-actualization is the top of Maslow's pyramid. But also, self-actualization is just knowing your truth and knowing yourself and being in tune with the values. And to me, self-actualization is just walking the walk. Honestly, it's just walking what you truly believe and feeling connected to that in a very real way. That's self-actualization. Okay, so the next thing is values and decision making. So oftentimes our values are in conflict with our choices, and so making decisions can be really difficult. Um, all decisions are made on incomplete data. Kind of goes back to the hindsight bias. Whereas, like, because after the fact, you tend to have a clearer picture of the decision that should have been made, and that can have a tendency for you to kind of beat yourself up about it. But it's a bias because we didn't have all the information at the time. If we did, we probably would have made a different choice, right? So, realizing that making good decisions all the time. I was going to say sometimes or most of the time, then I had to stop myself because it's really all the time. Because all of those decisions are made on that incomplete data, and we're just doing the best we can as humans. Yeah, so most major decisions involve value conflicts. There's that, classic example of, the train's going down the tracks and it's splitting two ways, and then you've got to decide if you want to kill like 5 people or one person that know and love really well, and how do you decide what to do, and there's no good options, there's no perfect options, there's just the ones that you've been given, and having to navigate that a lot of times is difficult with those value conflicts. Did you know that there's a procedure to make good decisions? I didn't either. It's in your book. And it has this great little acronym called ACTION. I feel like this is probably going to be on your test, so make some notes on it. Read it, highlight it, do what you need to do. So we're going to go through these together, okay? So, ACTION, ACTION. A is analyze the situation and gather information. Right? So, analyze the situation. What's going on? Okay, let's say that you're in the woods and there's a bear and there's, your car, and what do? Analyze the situation, gather information. What are your resources? What do you have? What are your options? What can you do? C, consider the alternate solutions. So consider your different choices. I could, I know that you're supposed to stand to the bear and like get big and like fight back to help him get away. But your car is close by. You might be able to get there before the bear, but bears can be fast, I've heard. So what do? So you consider all of those different solutions. T, take action and select the solution after calculating the possibilities. So yeah, pick your choice. Stand up to the bear, run for the car, juke the bear out. I don't know. I implement the solution and make a commitment to applying it. Ooh, I feel like that second part is the thing that a lot of people struggle with. Is to implement the solution. Okay, yeah, do it. And commit to the solution. Commit to applying it. That kind of like half in, half out thing, you don't get the results that you typically want than if you had just committed to it. Because like if you decide to run for the car and then like you like fake it out halfway and the bear's getting closer now because you didn't just go for that shot, that could be detrimental, and that could be not the thing that you wanted to do. Ongoing evaluation. Encourage and accept feedback on your solution. I mean, in this example, I don't know how that works except for maybe like, when the ranger follows up with you afterward, after you get in your car and you're able to call and have the ranger out there say, hey, if you do this and that, that'll prevent from, bears getting too close next time. You want to take that valuable feedback from an expert. So keep that in mind. And then need for change. After you have tried the solution, consider a need for modification. Maybe you need to take some firearms with you to scare the bear away if it happens again. Maybe camping's not for you. Maybe a different recreational activity would be better. I don't know. Different things like that. I hope this example was beneficial for you. So yeah, action. Remember that. Study that. Be prepared for that. Okay, so I've officially gone through the first 9 slides of the PowerPoint, and because I'm asking you to do, the top 5 assessment of your strengths, and I'm asking you to do. I did the values exercise with you guys. I'm gonna go ahead and make this kind of a stopping point. And the second half will be finished up for next class. Um, something I forgot about mindfulness. Did you know that we actually have a mindfulness institute right here in Huntsville? One of an incredible mindfulness institute where they actually do a, mindfulness stress reduction therapy, and somebody's certified in that works there, and they also have mindfulness classes and different things like that. I'm going to include their information below if you want to look more into mindfulness, or maybe getting in. They actually do a training once every fall and every spring, so I'm going to go ahead and plug them in for the Mindfulness Institute, and put their information below. If you have any questions, concerns, comments, suggestions, I'm sure you can reach out to the instructor, and she will be able to take care of it for you. I just want to thank you guys for letting me do this for you, and thanking Dana for letting me do this as part of my supervision. This is really interesting stuff, and I hope that you are able to apply it, at least a little bit that I've been able to help you with. Stay strong out there, stay positive in this challenging time that we're in, and good luck on the finals and getting done with the semester. Yeah. All right. Thank you guys. You have a good one.